Welcome to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. I'm James Groves, and along with my business partner, Bill Dement, we want to share our journey as small business owners with you. As owners of Hole in the Wall Drywall Repair, we will attempt to peel back the curtain of owning a small business in the trade service industry and talk about the many adventures of owning a small business. Hey, Bill.
James, good morning to you.
Good morning. I cannot believe we're December. We're recording this December 5th. It won't drop until next week, but we're already at Christmas. We're already at the end of the year. We're already in a time where, we're already planning our end of the year podcast. We reminisce on the whole year. And
James, and the guest we have is perfect for the Christmas atmosphere.
Oh,
This is his third trip in.
Mhm.
He's an old friend. He's got the feel of a well-worn sweater.
it's an easy podcast. Actually, we had to stop talking just so we can just record our conversation because it's just so good. We actually have had this person, and this will be his third visit. We've had his wife in.
Yep. She was a great guest.
And we actually spent probably the past half hour just talking about how great Wendy is. So without further ado, my favorite or least favorite saying, further ado, I'd like to introduce again Gerard Grant. Welcome, buddy.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me. It's always fun coming back.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you here. Obviously, those who are fans of the show know that you are our business attorney. We've
Yes.
had, you've helped us navigate tons of contracts and buys outs and franchise
And had
things
a handful of fresh ideas today.
fresh ideas. Yeah.
And I'm very glad that you've had me entrusted with handling, your business's legal needs. So,
Yeah. And now you have your own firm called Aventus Law Group.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, Aventus, we did some rebranding, and what we really wanted to focus on is, the business owners and also succession planning. So it's same thing that we do before with like business. We do general outside counsel work, tax planning, tax issues, but we really want to, focus on the transactional aspect to help our clients and provide better deliverables.
Yeah. And Gerard's fairly humble, but when you talk to other people in the industry and you mention Gerard's name, they all go, "Oh yeah,
Gerard.
Well, we know Gerard."
Oh.
So I feel very
always in hushed tones.
Yeah, I
Thank
feel
you.
very blessed to have you on our side.
Appreciate
I'm just
that.
glad you're in our corner.
Thank you.
if we ever need you in that regard.
Right.
So, and then just quickly shout out to Wendy. She was here
Yes.
earlier this year talking about Wendy,
Yes.
her almost side project that's turned into this juggernaut of a brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great job, Wendy. I ordered some of your room spray the other day, and it was fabulous. I'm sorry, your Black Friday sale went so well, you ran out. I got to order some more.
Yeah, there's worse problems to have.
That's right.
I know.
That's right.
So those of you who want some beautiful lotions and candles and sprays, go to Winvia.
That's right.
Yeah. Love it.
And men's products too.
And men's products too.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yes.
So gotta love that. Well, thanks for coming in today.
Yes.
We're rounding down the year,
Yeah.
but I thought it's been a minute since you've been here,
Yes.
and I know you've had a lot of changes. Obviously, we're excited on our side. We have a lot of really fun things happening in our business. The new training facility, franchises potentially being sold soon, and just a lot of momentum here.
Yes.
And obviously, I like hanging out with you.
Of course.
Off air, but just
Yes.
kind of fun to kind of lament and talk about life on air.
Well, no, I mean, again, with the introduction, it's very humbling, but I also wanted to give a shout out to you both. It's always great, seriously, when you witness your clients just surprise you and not tell you what they're doing, but just do it. And just to see the growth and then the leveling up that you all have done. You guys are just destined for greatness. And it's a really testament to your business prowess to share not only the successes, but sometimes some of the failures with your audience so that they can obviously gain success. So I just want to give you a round of applause for even just having this. Yeah, let's get that up. Right.
Oh, yeah. We'll take that.
Yeah.
Hey, that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Come on. Get that up a little longer.
For helping other businesses,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that's been our goal with this show. Obviously, we want success in our own business. That's why we get out of bed every day. But
Yes.
I love the opportunity to highlight other businesses, to maybe shed some. Countless stories of people saying, "Oh, I didn't know that until I heard it on the show."
Right.
Or being able to drive business to other people who are part of our hole in the wall universe.
And it's been surprising and energizing to get fresh ideas from people on the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a lot of fun.
Well, and we just love to learn. and obviously we're kind of smart guys sometimes, but we're not that smart sometimes. And we know a lot of smart people though. Right. And so I've always been told you want to be great, hang around great people. You are someone who you hang out with.
Yeah. I've always held that philosophy. I love to hang out with smart people and just be a fly on the wall. Just listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hence hanging out with Gerard Grant.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It definitely fits in that category.
That's right. That's right.
So what's going on in your world, man? What's going on with Aventus and you? And catch us up a bit.
All right. Well, we've basically same place, we're downtown Orlando, and obviously, most of our clients that we have had, business clients, they've always seemed to ask us around this time, I'm thinking of basically, selling my business interests. What do I do? What does that look like? We're thinking of a transition. How do we go from like point A to point Z? And can you guide us with, doing that? And what I tell folks, and especially right now with baby boomers who they've put in so much of their time and effort and energy into building this baby, that, there comes a point where it's either we want to basically have it run in the family or we want to basically exit. And what does that look like? And what I tell them, it's not just a simple, you're going to sell your business. You have to look at it from many different perspectives, right? Because you got to look at it from, although you're going to sell your business, are you really priming it up for sale? Is it in the best position to be sold? And what about the tax implications of the sale? There's many ways that you can mitigate, your taxes. And those are things and conversations that you need to start thinking about before you actually start getting into a sales contract or putting that business on the market.
So is there a recommended kind of time frame if I wanted to sell a business that I need to begin thinking about and working on those things?
Yeah, when you start your business, actually.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, when you start your business. Because, when you position in your mind that, look, when I start my business, I want to be in a position to also sell it, you're basically taking certain steps, you're making certain processes in place from an operational standpoint so that the next, say, hypothetically, years from now, when you look to sell it, it has all the right ingredients to be sold, right? There's processes, there's certain ways of doing things. You streamline the way how you deliver, your products or goods or services to customers so that you're not having to worry about that, because many sophisticated buyers, that's what they're going to want to know. They're going to want to do their due diligence. They're going to want to look under the hood of the car or your business to make sure that, from a filing compliance aspects, if there's regulatory filings, from tax filings, from whatever you can think of, that's been done. And once you start thinking of in the back of your mind, hey, when should I start getting ready? Well, I should start getting ready right now. It will basically put those good habits in motion so that when you do decide to sell at that time, you don't have to go back and start basically scrambling.
Well, and you kind of have to think about the end early.
Yes.
Beginning with the end in mind is a favorite of ours. Frankly, when I met Bill, he was running Dement Drywall and Paint.
Yes.
And then he did the DBA's hole in the wall. If he wasn't smart enough to he could have done drywall underneath Dement Paint. It's not sellable as easily if it's Bill Dement's paint shop or Bill Dement's drywall shop. So, but what is sellable is hole in the wall. Not that we want to sell, but you have to start early. And is the person, are you selling you? Because if your business is all about you.
Yeah.
Then it's difficult to sell you because you're not going to be there.
Well, we had this conversation many years ago. I remember thinking we can't have a business that's personality driven, because if that person leaves, then the business is gone. What you have to have is a business that's process driven.
Yeah.
And the processes have to be understood and be able to be managed by anyone who would come in to run the business.
Absolutely. No, I think you hit the nail right on the head, is that when you're selling, I think, just as a personal opinion, service related, businesses, you have to think of it like, if you remove yourself from the business, will it be just as profitable, sellable, marketable? And I think that, in certain industries like my industry, law, having that partner's name affiliated with the business or on the door is important. But I think, you know, as a society, we've kind of gone beyond that, and we're looking at it from a brand perspective. So when you think of Aventus Law, you're not thinking of Gerard Grant. You're thinking of, like, you know, Amal, Aoun, Bello now, and all the other folks that we work with. That's what you're thinking of. And that's how I think that y'all have obviously got it started early, where, you know, you rightfully said, instead of having it as like your name, you think of it like, hey, we're selling a concept, and that concept should be perpetual, ideally.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk a minute about what are the penalties for not thinking ahead on this? What happens if I have a small business and I just want to retire?
Yeah.
And here's the way entrepreneurs think.
Yeah.
They're saying, I don't want to retire because I like working. Okay. Sure. Okay. So the argument now is, so you're going to work till 70? Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah.
Are you going to be working at 75? Well, I don't know. My family has pretty good genes. I think I'm at 80 years old.
Yeah.
Well, I could still be hanging on if I have some kids. At 85, do you still? My point is, at some point, whatever that is, you're going to have to close the doors on this business or turn it over to somebody else. What's some of the penalties?
I would say that, you know, not being age specific, because I do know that folks who've worked in their 70s and 80s, and they're a lot more sharper than some folks that work, you know, in their 40s. But what people got to realize is that you got to be realistic, right? That, you know, sometimes you can't have that, you may not have that burn and that energy as you would in your 20s as you do in your 40s.
Sure.
Right? And I think that also, you know, making sure that we talked about branding and how important that is. You don't want to get to the point where you've run out of gas and then you got to do a fire sale because of some emergency in your life, in your personal life happens that you got to sell, and you're not really thinking of the transition. And the hardest part, I think, too, for entrepreneurs is, like, you know, we feel like we're immortal, and sometimes it's not like we think that every day, but it's just that we don't look at it like, if God forbid something were to happen, not necessarily, you know, something bad as death, but what about incapacity?
Yeah.
If you're not able to operate, who is going to basically operate that brand that you work so hard to cultivate? Right. And that's the thing, is that, like, we always got to be thinking of, okay, what is the exit plan at the beginning? Like, you know, to what we talked about.
Sure.
And once you start thinking about that, you know, if it's to the point, like, you know, you're in your golden years or you're approaching that time, you know, the business itself, like we talked about, it should be a well-oiled machine so that you can step away. And if you either work in the business or on the business, once you step away, the brand speaks for itself, and there's processes in motion. And when you start thinking about that early on, some of those, like, you know, situations can be easily avoided. And the penalties that you originally asked, they're severe penalties, because in many cases, if you don't start asking these questions early, right? Like, you know, you're 30 years in creating this great business for your family and for the community. They know who you are. God forbid something happens. Well, then who's going to run that business? Or if, you know, your kids don't want to, you know, be involved in the business, and you're not talking of you know, what that next step is. And then one day, you know, son or daughter or, you know, relative or whoever is like, you know, I think that I actually want to do something else. Well, that could be catastrophic if you don't really have a plan and you're looking to, you know, transition from another business to another chapter in, you know, short period of time. So it's always like, you know, thinking in the back of your head, like, you know, I need to start thinking of it right now, just so that I need to be prepared in the future when I do sell. And it's not an emergency sale. It's like I actually can control the terms of that event.
Well, we're not promised tomorrow, right? So things can happen.
Yes.
And we had something happen earlier in our relationship at Hole in the Wall where we had a partner get sick.
Yes.
We actually had one partner pass away. And luckily, thank God, we actually had some things in place. And so when one of us was incapacitated for a minute, it kept running. Right?
Exactly.
And kind of going back to what you said last podcast is, you know, succession planning, because what happens if something does happen? And if you have a tragedy in your life, God forbid you pass away or a family member. I had my old lawn guy. I was telling the story earlier. His father passed away. And he could not proceed with his business as planned.
Yep.
And he just closed up. Like he didn't sell his book of accounts. He literally just put his equipment on Facebook and then he shut down business.
Yeah.
Because his life couldn't continue as it was because of that life event. And he's fine. I think he got a little bit of inheritance, so he doesn't have to work as much.
Right.
But I mean, all of us as his customers, we were caught floundering. Like, oh, what's going to happen next week? Who's going to mow my lawn?
Yeah.
He didn't have this plan.
Right.
This legacy, part of this business structure.
Yeah. And that's what we talked about. I know the last time, what we really try and focus on is, two important aspects of your life, which is business succession planning and estate planning. And sometimes they're not apparently related, but, as a counselor, I tell folks, look, you got to look at it as like basically a bicycle and you need one wheel to support the other, right? Yeah. It's not a unicycle where you just have your estate plan and then that's it. Like you really should think of like, do we have a business succession plan and also do we have an estate plan that dovetails into both? Because, in situations where we look at the tax implications of selling the business, right? There's so many ways that, we probably need to do another podcast for this, but you can save so much in taxes if you just basically start structuring, your estate planning and your business succession properly, right? Like you can really take advantage of so many benefits by doing that, by just being more proactive, to be honest with you, right? So that when it comes time to basically, sign on the dotted line, you don't got to worry about like the tax planning. We've already covered that. So now it's really just getting the best deal, for you and your family.
Right. Because structuring it early, making sure you're set up, with all your corporations and whatever early.
Yes.
Will shield you or give you some flexibility with taxes down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also like estate planning, right? We use some strategies where we look at, making gifts, to your beneficiaries of, interest in your company so that, the actual gain, if any, would be attributable to that relative that might be taxed in a lower tax bracket, for an example. There's many to go over, but generally speaking, like, what we really like to do is to meet with the business owner, get an understanding of, what are their pressure points, what keeps them up at night. And we kind of do a diagnostic to make sure that upon due diligence that there's no hiccups, there's no events that will cause a potential buyer to like really, turn their nose and just decide not to move forward. We've seen it happen, believe you me. We've actually told clients that were interested in buying businesses that they ought to really consider certain aspects of what they were buying because from our due diligence, it didn't measure up or there was some gaps that were not explained. And that's one of the things that it could be such a big, I would say, detriment if you're a seller and the buyer decides not to move forward because of, a matter that could be, rectified or even corrected if they basically took the steps to get their business.
But a gut punch that would be to get so close to selling and not.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, this is the fire sale. If you're relying on that one person to kind of come in at the last minute to buy you and you're looking at, well, I got, 20 years in this business, it's worth X number of dollars to me.
Yes.
But if you built it around you,
right?
Yeah, and it's not going to be $20 million worth to somebody else.
And the hard part too, just with that, it just reminds me of an episode or a matter that we were working with this year. Is one of the spouses was so embedded in the family business that the other spouse had no idea what was going on, and that spouse unexpectedly died. And then the surviving spouse, myself and some other advisors, we were trying to basically help salvage the business. But, it was just, everything went okay. But I think that we could have gotten a better job had the deceased put some parameters in place to make sure that there's proper succession.
Yeah. I had when someone else who works on my house does all my sprinklers and his wife does all the bookkeeping, just does everything. She was in QuickBooks. She just had it all dialed in. Yeah. And so he was the worker in the field and she was the front office person.
Yeah, that's actually really common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she passed away. And when I met him, I saw him again a year afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And he's well, I'm just trying to, figure it all out. So
Yeah.
he's still trying to keep the work going, keep the money in.
Yeah.
But he then has to go home and try and play with QuickBooks, and he couldn't even get into the certain logins, and so he had to create new logins, and it was a really difficult task for him. Because in my mind, one of the lessons that we learned early is that you cannot do business in a vacuum. You have to have outside people being able to at least to kind of help you and guide you, and even have the processes written down. We've got a bookkeeper in house, but if she left tomorrow or something happened to her, I need to make sure that we still.
It goes on. Yeah. It continues. And, another aspect that I thought about with selling businesses is the psychological warfare that sometimes is present during that whole period, because, how long have you been in this business?
Well, started in the painting industry in the mid 80s, so 40 some years.
So we're talking about 40 something years. Now, what would happen in yourself?
Mm-hmm. I've been here at Home 10 years.
He's got a decade at it. Yep.
Now, you think about that, right? Where you've put in so much effort, energy, time, and even though on the other side, there's obviously like the freedom and like the, you're reaping the rewards of your hard labor. Emotionally, how do you see that? In the sense that you're doing every day you wake up, you come to the office, you're, interacting with like your client and your staff. And, it's as if like you are basically the paternal figure in this business.
Yeah.
It's our identity.
No, your position changes. I joke sometimes, but I haven't answered the phone around here in probably 7 or 8 years.
And then one day you're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's honestly one of the biggest. We represented a client where they've just, built a really great counseling business, and then they sold it to a private equity group. And in some times, he would call me and he would basically talk about just anxiety, because this is what they knew for a certain amount of time. It became part of their daily routine.
And what you're saying is not only have you sold your business, you've also sold your life and your lifestyle. Because you're accustomed. I actually was listening to a guy on a podcast this morning talking about here's the unexpected things in retirement. Is that you don't have that social group anymore. You don't have that daily built-in social interaction that you have when you're on a job.
It's your identity. Frankly, we are Hole in the Wall. So if there ever a day came when we weren't in Hole in the Wall, we got to create a new, part of our identity is gone. A lot of our friend groups are part of the business.
Absolutely.
And so, like our time of day, we when we're not at our desk working, we're thinking about Hole in the Wall. We're listening to podcasts, like Bill was saying, to kind of benefit the company. And then when that's over, I could see how that could be a little.
Yeah. And that aspect is one of the things that, like, when we start to work with clients, and not even putting it that way, but when you're looking to think of like selling or just entertaining that, it's so advisable that you get emotionally somewhat aware that this is going to be the end result, that I'm no longer going to be.
Well, that's step one, is that awareness.
Yes.
I'm curious, how did your counselor, how are they resolving that?
What we did is that when we talked about the undertaking of what they're going to have to do during the due diligence, we, for some odd reason, wanted to have them write a plan as to what their 5-year future looks like after the sale. Like, what hobbies, what interest would you do had you not been in the business? And that helped with like the ease of the anxiety of like, what is my life going to look like? You know what I mean? Because, sometimes that could be their escape away from home. That could be, what thrives them, what makes them like wake up in the morning. I'm not saying that their kids or their family doesn't do it, but there's some aspect of that you've seen something that you've created it successfully, and then now it's like you're giving it away. And there's that legacy question, like, is my legacy going to be tarnished by this new buyer? How is it going to be impacted? The relationships that I have with some of the employees that are staying, you don't want to tarnish that overnight.
No.
So what we did is that we tried to discuss, let's look at, what you're going to do to replace that system that you've had for X amount of years. and let's look at your future. Like, let's look at new goals. This is not like the death of an event. This is like maybe the closing of one chapter and the opening of the
you're
new
getting
chapter.
a new operating system.
You're getting it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then also too, I mean, what we did is that when we worked with the buyer, we also had a way that they can still have some type of input, you know what I mean, in the old business, because it's
nice.
just not necessarily you want to do a clean break. Some instances you do. If it's like obviously the seller has health problems or they just need to really just get away. Yes, it's sometimes good to have a clean break, but in other times it's not necessarily the case. Like, you still need to have that mentorship and then also help the new buyer transition.
Yes.
Right.
So that's not an uncommon approach, right? Is have the previous buyer stay on as a consultant or, as a, at least with some form of presence in the operations.
Yeah. I've known many of people who've actually sold to VCs.
Yeah.
And then they kept them on for 2 years.
Yes.
Just to make a smooth transition.
And we talk about that. And the whole reason is that, like, when you start with the end in mind, like what we talked about, and then when you get closer to that event, that's when we really want to start to engage in these conversations to, like, bring in other advisors that are more obviously specified in their area to help with like business valuation, making sure that the seller gets the, highest purchase price, but then from the other aspect of the due diligence and making sure that they're ready to basically engage in this and, tax planning, we obviously, advise that the sooner the better. You don't have to be locked into contract, but you need to start knowing what you don't know and knowing what you do need to do to really plan for that successful event.
So what happens if somebody they haven't thought about any of this stuff?
Yeah.
And then they just realize, you know what, in a year or 2 years, I just want to be done. Is there something that can be done for that guy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes there's not necessarily a time, like I would say, like before you sign the dotted line, that might be a little bit like of a time crunch. But, if you're looking at like a year before, like seriously want to put your business on the market or really getting to the exit, we can absolutely help you. And I think that there's enough leeway that you can make sure that, if there's any issues that need to be corrected, you can correct them. If there's operational glitches that need to be fixed, you can fix them. And just basically seeing how, with financials, right? Because let's be real, end of the day, that's a huge important component, and making sure that, you do an audit to basically avoid any type of red flags if there's due diligence on like, well, you said that operations are XYZ high, but then in that year they had something called a PPP, which basically provided funding. Like that's not part of, operations success. We're backing that out. Well, you know what? You might have forgotten that was part of it. And then when they do the due diligence, it's like, hey, why is sales fluctuating? You know what I mean? So it's like those types of like, events that we can craft a narrative to help with the seller. Now, I don't do it personally, but like, a team of advisors that you have early on can help with that to make sure that you get the, highest and
kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, there's an emotional aspect of releasing yourself from a business. And frankly, being an ops person, I think I want to sell the business to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't succeed, I'm going to mourn that you've just ruined my business that I've spent years building, right?
Yes.
So I want to make sure that I'm going to hand you over the keys to a successful business as opposed to I want to snooker you and get you to buy something that might be on the last leg.
Right. Well, no, absolutely. I mean, because there's personal pride. I mean, you've had pride when you're like building this, right? And you want to make a turnkey. I mean, the only thing that's going to change is just the person wearing that hole in the wall shirt, right? But it should grow. And you should basically prime it for that new buyer to grow it. And obviously, if that doesn't happen, there's always that second guessing. Like, what is it that I did not do? Did I not stay for the transition period long enough? Did I not basically prime them of certain seasons and what you need to do to beef up, like, staffing or whatever the case? Like, tons of issues that can happen, but it all boils down to at that point when you realize that, look, the emotional side, I've done my best. I've put that person in a position to success. And if they don't, I can peacefully walk away knowing that I've done what I've done to basically help them grow. Sometimes you just can't control it. That's just the unfortunate reality. But we do want to help and make sure that you do and put that new buyer for success. But it's just unfortunately sometimes that, you cannot control the outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you know that there are over 140 million homes in the U.S.? 97% of them have walls and ceilings that are built using drywall. The drywall repair industry is simply enormous, valued at over $13 billion a year. We're hole-in-the-wall drywall repair, and for years we have been perfecting the art of repairing drywall, developing and refining our systems, and strengthening our brand. Our business model is simple, scalable, and easy to learn. We believe it's a real game changer. We are successful drywall repair pros who decided to take our repair business to a higher level, growing both our franchise training and support to industry-leading standards. You'll benefit from our vast experience helping your franchise hit the ground running and achieve success quickly. We'll give you access to our marketing team that has created strategic programs designed to get your phone ringing and booking new business fast. Join a fast-growing leader in an exciting dynamic segment of the home service industry by franchising with hole-in-the-wall drywall repair. Start building your own business and securing your own financial future today. We've talked about kind of beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah.
We talked about trying to figure out how to make sure you have all of the right steps and your process is dialed in. So you're not just selling you, but the business can stand on its own without you.
Absolutely.
What are some other things that we can think about now? Because we have no desire to sell right now, right?
Yeah.
But again, we're not promised tomorrow.
Yeah.
If something happened to Bill or myself, if I got in a car accident tomorrow, Bill has to have some really hard discussions and figure out how to move forward with the business and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that we can just kind of start doing now or someone who's just starting out in business to kind of move in that direction, knowing that there is an exit strategy? One of the first things that our franchise director said is, what's your exit strategy?
Yes.
As we move forward with growing your franchise business, what is your strategy? How many more years do you want to be in this business? How much longer? How much money are you trying to get out of it when you do sell? Or do you want to sell? Do you want to gift it to your children?
Yes.
So those are discussions we had earlier on in the game. But I probably just stole some of your thunder. But
yeah, you did.
Yeah, so.
No. But it's a good segue. I mean, what you've just described, that's exactly what you need to do, right? I'll just hit a couple of points. You want to think of the end in mind. Right? Because I think that just changes the trajectory of how you do things. When you think of the end in mind, you really think like, hey, I can probably do this goal or this task really quickly. But if I think of the end in mind for the new person coming in, I want to make sure that I don't do it, but I also document how to do it, right? So when you think of the end in mind, that obviously makes you prepare the SOPs better. It makes you really think of someone coming in to make this turnkey, right? Because you're not selling what you individually do, you're selling what this great company, the system, right? Really honing in on the systems, right? And then I also think of how do you basically increase your market share, right? Your reputation or the company's reputation. What are some of the things that, you're not just posting, but I was reading a post about, you really want to come off as a thought leader, which you all do a phenomenal job of. So, I mean, that doesn't apply here. But for some of the other businesses, that's important. How do you come off, obviously, as a thought leader, right? Because being a thought leader in an industry, obviously, it increases the brand, right? Not you, but increases the brand. And that's ultimately what you want to think of, because at the end, people, they want to buy the brand, right? Because we wanted to make sure that they're not just buying you, right? Then you also want to think of, obviously, succession. In the event of you're not able to basically work in the business, you're working on the business, who are the individuals that could be tasked with replacing you, right? Because ultimately, there's, I think, an evolution as when you're in a position of running a business, you really got to think big picture, but you also got to make sure that things are working, and deliverables are being met. So, think of who are those persons that really understand it, that you can groom, right? And if you don't have that right now, and you're thinking of like having your child or someone relative, do that, you really got to have a hard conversation and figure out if that person truly has interest in doing it, or are they just doing it?
Or do they have the ability?
Exactly. More importantly, do they have the ability, right? Because the worst thing is to really, have, I would say, years of grooming, your child or someone into like basically stepping into a role that you want for them, but it's not what they want for themselves. Yeah. That's the worst, because it's going to come a time where I'm sick of it. I don't want to do this no more. And then you're stuck basically step one, where you got to find that person, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that we've found fairly successful with us is hiring people, training people to take over certain tasks of your role. One of the curses that we do as business owners is we try and just kind of keep it all to ourselves. We're going to do it all, right?
Yeah. Try to own it all.
We're going to try to own it all.
Yeah.
And then we shoot ourselves in the foot, because how can I grow this company if I'm always working inside the company? Listen, I used to be the one that would help answer the phones, that would do the estimates.
Yes.
Bill go to job sites and actually write the estimates on his yellow pad. And then, I was the one who's doing the crew scheduling and doing the liaison between the business homeowners and the crew, and making sure the estimates were approved.
Yeah.
Well, how could I attend networking events? How could I build franchise brands and training and bigger picture things in this company if I didn't train someone like Mike Elliott to kind of step in and start running the other portions of the job? Hiring front office admin people, hiring bookkeepers and accountants to kind of take care of some of those things. If you are trying, because listen, if I'm doing all of it, I'm not paying salaries, I'm making more money.
Yeah.
But we found that if we can release some of those tasks and delegate them out and train them accordingly, we can make more money.
Absolutely.
Because we're able to work on the business instead of in the business to steal a nice quote from somebody else.
Yeah, you stole my thunder again. Yes. That's the beauty of this whole podcast, is that, we are just so open and fluid with like these great ideas. And that's a big, I would say, lesson for business owners, even myself, to understand, is that, there's just certain tasks that are better performed by really delegating, right? And delegating among your team.
Yeah. And finding that right team member. When I first brought James in as a partner, I realized he had a completely different skill set than I did.
Yeah.
And he was so capable. And for a while there, I was like, I felt a little less than.
Yeah.
And then I had this conversation with my wife one day, and she says, you got to think of this as a relay race. You ran the first race. You think James was going to do what you did to get this thing off the ground? Never. Not in a million years.
No, I would not.
So I took the sacrifices. I did every job in this company. Everything that gets done right now, I did everything. But it got to the point that it was just too big for me. And in order for the company to grow, I was going to need to hand off that baton for the second leg of the race. And I think we did a pretty successful job. There was a small transition there. And then what is amazing is I saw James finish that second lap at Hole in the Wall Orlando and have to hand that baton off to Mike Elliott. Yeah. That was interesting watching, from the grandstands.
Right.
And there was a little bit, and it took a while.
Yes.
Because James was used to doing this and this and this. And then bit by bit, Mike was pulling things away from James because he needed to be the those, not James. Yeah. That's his decision, not James's anymore.
Like simple things. Right. Like the technicians would go to Home Depot, and my cell phone, it was the cell phone number for the accountant. So they would then text me every morning, Scott is here, he needs to spend $200 on, and I would approve it. Yeah. And he's like, James, why are you the one doing that? Are you up at 6:30 in the morning? Do you want to get those phone calls at 6:30 in the morning? I don't want to have those phone calls at 6:30 in the morning. He says, well, why don't you let me take this? So he actually was just kind of like,
step by step.
When you said pulling it out of me,
he was.
Yeah.
You can call Sherwin and order the supplies for me, so I don't have to. You can be the one, to the point that we actually let him pay for lunch every now and then.
Yeah, we do. He pulls out a company card and pays for lunch for us.
Just to that training. See, we're talking about that training, but that's so critical. Learning when it makes more sense to delegate and then let someone else be tasked with that responsibility than you trying to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Because like, let's face it, we're all human. We only have a certain amount of like bandwidth really in the day to focus on like, critical, like, items in our business. And, your time and calories would be spent better on working on the business than working on like, details that, someone else that's qualified and capable could do.
Yeah.
Why not?
And there's a sanity, aspect is that, I mean, Bill and I talk about this a lot, but the older you get, we've saved up money, we've invested all of our time, we watch our kids, but I want to enjoy life now while I'm still healthy enough to enjoy life.
Yeah.
So being able to relieve the business pressure by delegating that out, when Bill was able to go on vacation for a week for the first time. And not have to sweat.
And I got paid while I was gone.
That's another.
Right? And not have to worry about, is the business going to be there when I return from my vacation? When I can leave the country to go to Cancun on vacation, and I can literally go click and I unplug myself for a week.
Yes.
And then when I come back, I know that if there was an issue, my team took care of it.
Yeah.
And that sanity, that quality of life, if we can figure that out now, one of my fears is I'm going to spend my whole life, I'm going to save for legacy, make sure my kids have a good inheritance, and I'm going to work my tail off, and then I'm going to retire at 65, 75 years old. And then I have, 5 years if I'm lucky, 10 years if I'm lucky, to enjoy the money that I've been saving, the life that I've been developing. And I'm not physically able to do that as I was, and now that I'm in my 50s. But being able to like enjoy life as you journey through business and life, as opposed to waiting till the end of the day. That's that sanity. That's that kind of make sure that my wife is enjoying life with me. You know?
That's right.
Instead of watching me work.
There needs to be an awareness of that too. When you retire, you're not the same at 60 or 65 that you will be at 85. One of the gurus that I listened to, because I'm, getting like, I'm thinking, what's retirement look like a few years down the road? But he says it comes in 3 phases. When you retire, you got the go-go years. Then you got the slow-go years. And then you got the no-go years.
But it's so true that you did mention that, because I think, we've always been, I guess, crafted with this mindset that, you burn out until retirement. And then when you retire, it's going to be like, those Club Sandals commercials where you're just going to be coming out in this like bright sun in the beach, clear water. I mean, some people don't want that. Some people just want to be with their grandchildren. They want to do work that they could not do to support a worthy cause.
Right.
And you want to be able to not just bank on the fact that you're going to have the health, you're going to have the time to do that 10 years down the road. So you might as well start enjoying that right now while making sure that
there's a certain logic to it.
There is. We talk financially, make sure you have a diversified income, make sure you have multiple income streams, so you're not just relying on one thing for your sole source of income. It's kind of that way with your psyche too. Don't just have all your psyche in one thing. Have your religious church element, or have a nonprofit you're working with, or have a side hobby, or have a vacation plan, or have have the ability to go enjoy things outside of to give your brain a break. One of the things that we, in this workday, we go out to lunch almost every day. We stop and we maybe make food here. But we do that on purpose to give our brains and our psyche just a little bit of a relief from the pressures and the stress of the day-to-day work. So being able to step back to maintain good mental health is crucial for longevity, because if you don't, you're going to burn out.
Absolutely. No. And I think that, with regards to this whole topic that we're discussing today, it's like you've got to create somewhat of a lifestyle within a lifestyle, right? You're working hard as an entrepreneur. You're it's 24/7, right? But the thing is that you still got to maintain a healthy 24/7, because ultimately, no matter how many great attorneys, advisors, whatever the case is, your health is your wealth. Right. And there's no estate plan or business succession plan that can really prevent situations from that deteriorating. So it's always good to, what you just talked about, take that, break during the day, because at the end of the day, your life is so delicate and precious that, your loved ones need you, your friends need you, your employees need you, but you need to start thinking of in line with that end. Think of the end. You got to start thinking of, how do I get to the end where I'm not in a situation of I got to do this because there's no other option? You want to.
Right. And you don't want to be pressing right up to the end where your toes are hanging over the grave and you just sign the paper and plop into the grave.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not what I want to do. I want to be able to sit back on the sidelines and watch my legacy thrive.
Yes. I agree.
And enjoy life. I'd kind of like to do that.
We all should. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, what else? Anything else before we've got 45 minutes almost of this already. Can you believe it already?
I know. Time flies when you're having fun. No, I think that we've covered a lot of the basics and, with different businesses, it obviously is going to depend on like different situations and what is best for that particular business owner. But I would definitely cap on this is that, you really want to start thinking of the end in mind. You really want to make sure that you have, a good estate plan and business succession plan. And you really want to start thinking of how do I get myself primed for a sale? And, don't just wait until you're ready or you have to be forced to sell because you might not get the best price. You might not get the best terms that you would have gotten if you started kind of thinking of, hey, although I wanted to work until I'm this age, right now, the market's showing that this is a really optimal time to sell because a lot of the VCs and all these other groups are wanting to buy. And hey, I know I wanted 2 more years. Maybe I can still work as a consultant or an advisor, but get the maximum price because, cycles happen in the real estate cycle and different interest rates and all these other factors that you got to, think about. It's not too late to talk to someone, an advisor, but at the same time, it's not too early. That should be something to think about, as you're navigating the entrepreneurial dream.
Good words, good advice.
That's the soundbite. I started. That's the soundbite. I'm going to steal that.
Don't worry. Good words of advice.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody who's listening wants to get a hold of you and pick your brain a little bit and hire Aventus, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. You can reach out. Our website is www.aventuslawgroup.com. And you can basically, feel free, my email and our phones there. And if there's any questions or you'd like to have a consult or anyone needs a consult, have them give us a call. Be more than happy to discuss their needs.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in. We will continue this conversation again.
Yes.
Let's not wait so long to get you back in next time.
That's right.
Love seeing you, my friend. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been a great show.
Thank you all.
We'd like to thank you for listening to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. We'd love for you to join our Facebook group and keep the conversation going. If you'd like to learn more about us and our business, check us out at holeinthewall.com. If you'd like to learn more about how to start a Hole in the Wall franchise, go to holeinthewallfranchising.com.